Imagine all your audio entertainment available in just one place. That's what the Audible app is all about. With Audible, you can always find the best of what you love or discover something new. Audible has an incredible selection of wellness titles and originals, like The Light Podcast by Michelle Obama, Work It Out by Mel Robbins, and Confidence Gap by Russ Harris. Membership includes access to Audible originals, podcasts, and tons of audiobooks that you can download or stream as much as you want. And as an Audible member, you can choose one title per month from an ever-growing catalog of titles to keep. The Audible app makes it easy to listen anytime, anywhere, whether you're traveling, working out, doing chores, wherever your day takes you. New members can try Audible now free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/motivation or text motivation to 500-500. That's audible.com/motivation or text motivation to 500-500 to try Audible free for 30 days.
The weather is cooling down a bit. The leaves are starting to fall. Yes, it's that time of year again. Football season. And we all know the best part of any game day traditions are the ones that involve food. There's nothing like having everyone in your game day crew coming together to bring their best bites and argue over whose family makes the best chili. And while there's no need to mess with the perfection of game day classics, like a freshly grilled Oscar Mayer hot dog topped with Heinz ketchup and mustard, it's always fun to step out of your comfort zone and get creative with your recipes. Because there's nothing more fun than adding to your list of game day traditions, like making a creamy and delectable queso dip with Velveeta cheese that can be eaten with so much more than just chips. Now is the chance for people across the nation to find out whose game day eats reign supreme. It's your turn to show off your tasty game day food traditions. Go to www.gamedayfoodtraditions.com to share a photo of your game day food tradition to enter to win $10,000. Once again, that's www.gamedayfoodtraditions.com to enter to win $10,000.
This is Full Change with Tom Laidlaw.
All right, Tom, we got a really exciting show today. We have a Ranger legend and one of your old teammates. He was the youngest captain in Ranger history, and he's a neighbor, used to be a neighbor of yours.
Yeah.
We're going to have Dave Maloney on today.
Definitely, yes. He was my landlord for a while there, too. Man, that was a bad decision by him.
It sure sounds like it. Hopefully we'll get into that with Dave and some other things.
That's funny. That's good. All right, this is a big thrill for me. My old teammate, man, I respect a great deal. Dave Maloney, how are you doing, David?
Doing well. I think that's the first time you've ever mentioned the fact that you actually had some respect for me. That's just made my day, actually.
We're joking around a little bit, but I do have a ton of respect for Dave. Dave was one of the first guys I remember that really prepared yourself. You prepared yourself for after hockey, and I was really impressed by that. You know, me, I'm the mutthead. You know, wasn't until the day I was told I was done that I figured, he's going to get a job here. So.
Yeah. Right. Well, you know what? I think, we talked a little bit, over the time about where we've ended up and how we've gotten there. And for me, that whole post-career thing really started when I was an 18-year-old. And I was with Alan Eagles' firm with sports management. And I'd gone to Bobby Orr's camp as a 12-year-old. And I went back and they asked me over the following winter whether I'd like a job there. And I went, well, okay. Yeah. And I ended up working 11 weeks for $50. I was a junior counselor.
Wow.
And it was great. What a great place to spend a summer. It was up north of Toronto on a lake. And so Bobby Orr happened to be my idol those days. And I ended up with his lawyer agent, Alan Eagleson, who would become a lot more infamous than he probably thought he was going to head. But in the bottom line, his firm sat me down with an accountant, Tom Brown. I'm sure he sat down everyone. I said, listen, you're going to only play for a short window of your life, and you may want to think about, this may seem far off, but, after hockey, you're going to have the rest of your life to live. So I don't know whether it resonated with anyone else the way it did with me, but that was about as sound as life advice as I certainly got at that time. So it was great.
And you really thought that way while you were playing? I thought, okay,
I need to particularly, Tom, I got married when I was 24. I had a child when I was 26. And right after I got married, and then it had always been in the back of my mind, though. Like it really hadn't, but I really never pursued anything until it's probably, when we went from a 22-minute guy night to like out in a gin hand, right? You can be in the lineup and out, and I go, boy, I have a young family, and I actually lived in Connecticut my whole life since then. And you can't just, you got to go to work before to live around here. So it was good. Though. I have no regrets.
So you grew up in Kitchener, Ontario, correct?
I actually grew up in Lindsay, Ontario. So I was born in Kitchener.
Okay.
And my family moved, I'm the oldest of 7.
Right.
And so I always tell, I was born in Kitchener in 1956. And Bob and Don and the rest of them were born in Lindsay. And my youngest sister, Rosemary, was born in Kitchener when we moved back to Kitchener when I was 15. So Lindsay, Ontario is really where I grew up. Right. And then, like you, we had a little farm when I was, we moved to a farm when I was 8 or 9. And which was a great thing for my father. He grew up, we were just shanty Irish, we were like the rest of us. Not a whole lot of money. And so I was born in July of 56. My brother Bob was born in August of 57. And Don was born in September of 58. My sister Janet was born in October of 60. So my poor mother had 4 of us within 4 years. And then when we got,
they know what causes that,
Yeah, I was like, if I was brazen enough at the time, I said, "Dad, will you please leave her alone? Leave her alone.
Get off my mother." That's funny.
So then when we got to be kind of rambunctious young lads, my father thought, okay, the farm might be a place for these kids to grow up in.
Right.
Yeah, I always tell the story too. We started with 1 cow.
Is that right? Really? Wow.
Yeah, started with 1 dairy cow.
Right.
And I remember he told me a story about Bobby Hull, who grew up on a farm. Bobby Hull and Gordie Howe grew up on a farm. They used to milk the cows, and that's why they could have a really good wrist shot.
Oh,
I used to milk the daylights out of that cow.
That's funny. That is true. I remember those days too, growing up on the farm every day, twice a day. Yeah,
twice a day, 365 days a year, right?
Isn't it funny, Dave? And I hope it comes across as a compliment because that's how it's meant. I think we're both kind of the same way. We're skilled enough as athletes, but it was more just showing up every day, right? Once you get from the whole farm life.
Things were. I'm sure you look back on it a little more romantically than it was at the time. I remember there were the 3 boys, and we had a hired man because we ended up, that 1 cow became, I must say 25 or 30. Right. So it was a dairy farm. We used to ship the cream to the creamery. We raised veal calves.
Right.
And we used to have a hired man who was a little bit older. John McCall, I'll never forget. He had to work, and then so it would take 2 of the boys, the Maloney boys, and John McCall to do the chores. So every chore you got off. Then of course, if you're trying to, whatever would have been going on, you need to kind of negotiate with your brothers whether they could fill in for you or stuff like that. It was great. I really do think there are a couple of things. The disciplines were sure, the hard work. Never afraid of hard work. And then I realized that I didn't want to milk cows the rest of my life too.
Yeah, is that true? I'm the same way. My father came to me, he was like 14 or 15 years old, asked me if I wanted to be a farmer because he was going to sell the farm. I said, not a chance in the world do I want to be a farmer. I'm playing the National Hockey League.
Well, and as you mentioned, with all due respect, because it's a very important segment of our community and society. So, but we were able to kind of move on from there and take a lot of the stuff you learned there, just honest, hard work.
Totally.
And it was great.
And doing things the right way too, right? Because you didn't have much money because they couldn't afford to buy new tractors all the time and everything. So they had to maintain the tractors.
Just, again, that's the thing. We're fortunate. Like there's a lot of times I've been asked if you would wanted to have had your children experience your childhood. Yeah, I would have. It didn't turn out that way. But there was a lot of real good, honest stuff that you learned early in life that stayed with you a long time.
Right. And don't you think probably we're older now. I think we appreciate it even more, right? Because now we're looking back at our life and saying, wow, that was really made a big difference in everything for you, your career.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's like what I found over the course of life is that it's important to look back and it's important to keep it in perspective. Also looking back, we have a lot more to look at. Because the longer we live, we have a lot more to look at, as opposed to when you're younger, you never look back because your future was right ahead of you.
Isn't that true?
Yeah.
When you're playing, I've said this to people before. Listen, I'm sure the same way. It's an honor, privilege because you worked hard, you're proud of yourself and everything. But it's kind of like it isn't the real world. It wasn't until you get out of hockey that you now start living in a real world, right?
Yeah. No, and I do remember I was never, so I was the oldest, and the hockey came fairly easily. You know, it was something I loved to do and could do it. And I remember my parents, maybe to somewhat of a detriment, but I don't think in the long run to a detriment. They always told like keep it humble. You know what?
Yeah.
You're not quite as good as you think you are.
Yeah.
And you know, there are sometimes I think, well, maybe I could have used a little more encouragement, but I don't regret because things just turned out.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah, I see that the same people. My parents really never pushed anything on me,
Mhm.
but the biggest thing they did was they never took away my dreams, right? They
Right.
just always allowed me to have the
Right.
dream, and if I wanted to pursue it, yeah, it was up to me.
Well, that's the thing too. Is the message I remember distinctly was, okay, you sign up and you see it through.
Yeah.
Well, if it's a season or if it's whatever you sign up for or whatever you commit to,
Yep.
see it through to the end or whatever that end is. And if you
Yep.
want to do it again, then but you signed up and you committed. So
Yeah, totally. So, Dave, do you remember the moment where you said to yourself, like, man, I'm going to play in the National Hockey League, or I'm dreaming of playing it? Was it like that when you were a kid, like 6, 7 years old, 8 years old? You had that dream?
well, I think we all at that age for
Yeah.
sure thought we were going to. I remember, and I've heard many guys tell the story where you're at that age where they ask you what you want to be when you grow up.
Yeah.
I remember, I don't know, I said I want to be a gas man or something like that, or but I don't know what it was. No, I didn't say that. I said I want to be a hockey player.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the Catholic schools, and I remember Sister Mary Vincent going, well, that's nice, Dave, but
Yeah.
you might want to think about a real job. You know?
Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Is it true? You think back so many times of all the people you told you're going to play in the National Hockey League, and they go, well, okay, yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't, you know, again, as you said, I was always encouraged to go play. I don't ever remember being not competitive.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that
you
was
are competitive. Dave is a competitive man. I like that.
No, I don't ever remember being like, yeah, I was always the first on the ice, and
Sure.
I had my equipment all laid out before practice, and because we used to practice, I was living in Lindsay. I was in grade school, so you know, you're like in grades 4, 5, and 6. Practice before I had my equipment all laid out before school, and that's the thing. My brother Bob and Don was almost as competitive.
Right.
My brother Bob, who's now a doctor, and God love him, he was like, you know, his competitive wick was 9 miles long. So, so he'd always have to get wrestled out of bed and stuff like that. And
Right.
Don and I never did have to do that.
One of my favorite Dave Maloney stories is my first training camp, and I wanted to make the team, right? So we're at Rye Playland, and I'm hitting everybody. I knocked Phil Esposito on his ass one time and everything. He wanted to go, and I hit Don, and you weren't even in the scrimmage. It was a scrimmage, and you were on the side by the glass, and you were yelling at me because I hit Don, and I'm thinking, well, I'm supposed to hit him, Dave.
Yeah,
you're going to stick up for your brother no matter what. And I thought, I mean that as a total compliment. That's I remember thinking about that, like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, blood is thicker than water. So that it was. But no, I never. And honestly, Tom, I don't remember losing at a whole lot of things that I did as a kid.
Yeah. Oh man. I remember you were like a competitive man. I mean, that is a total compliment. You're a first round pick too, weren't you?
Yeah. First round, I was 13th overall.
Dave, could you tell us about the day you were drafted and how that was for you and your family?
Yeah.
How was the reaction?
Yeah, it was. Well, I'll tell you. 2 days before the draft, so I had been under the. I worked by that time. I'd worked 4 or 5 summers at the Orr-Walton camp. So Alan Eagleson, Bobby Orr. There were a lot of hockey people around there, so I was kind of known, a bit of a known entity from that standpoint. But I do remember I was doing, so that was grade 12. I was doing track and field in the spring, and I came home, and we had a little house on Oakwood Avenue and a little kitchen, and there was all kinds of smoke in the kitchen. And my mother was pan frying some meat, and she'd gotten a call from the agent lawyer, and they were wanted to talk to parent. My father was away at work about would I turn pro if I got drafted. And of course, my mother, this was, I should backtrack a little bit because the WHA was another league at that time. The Vancouver Blazers had reached out. This is even a better story. The Vancouver Blazers had reached out. They wanted to sign me before the draft.
Before the draft, okay.
Yeah, before the draft for World Hockey, which they were doing at that time. And I remember my father and I went down to meet with Eagleson in Toronto, and my dad used to roll his own cigarettes. So Alan Eagleson said, I can pick up the phone and get you $250,000 right now in Vancouver. And my dad's rolling his cigarettes, and now the shards are flying out.
And what's your father probably making at that point, like 15,000 a year?
Oh, yeah, if that, 15,
yeah.
20.
Yeah.
Which, again, is different than
Yeah,
that was an astronomical amount of money.
Sure.
And so Eagleson says, we're not going to call him. And like, what?
So he didn't ask you any questions. He just said, we're not going to call.
Yeah.
Oh,
we're not going to call him.
Wow.
As it turned out, Eagleson was so tied in. He knew that the NHL was going to open up the draft. So that particular year, every team could take one underage draft pick, and it had to be in the first 2 rounds.
Oh, okay.
2 rounds. And to this day, our good buddy Gresh, he was a 2nd round pick.
That's right.
But he was a logical 1st round pick. Like, I go back and I read some of the articles on the draft and the stories. So he got bumped down,
right?
Because I got picked by the Rangers.
Oh.
So that's about the last time I ever thought I had more money than Gresh. Well, anyway, so then fast forward, you go. We denied the draft's coming up. Get the phone call, and it turns out they had thought it was Chicago, Montreal, or Boston were the 3 teams. And of course, Boston, it was Bobby's. Montreal, they took 3 guys, and they had the 4th pick was later than the Rangers.
Right.
So Chicago, the Rangers stepped up and took me before those other 3 had their pick. Montreal did have a pick.
Sure.
So then that's. So I found out on the way to the draft, Eagleson had 6 or 7 of us taken in the 1st round.
Oh, wow.
So he had us all into Toronto for the draft, and I got out of school early, drove down, and I heard it on the radio.
Oh.
That's on CHUM 1050 Toronto.
Chum, I remember that station. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But they went through the draft because the Leafs taken Jack Valaket right ahead of me.
Wow.
And so they were talking about the Leafs pick and
stuff. Who's the 1st overall pick in that draft? Do you remember?
Greg Jolly.
Greg Jolly.
Wow. That's from Regina. It went Greg Jolly, Rick Hampton. He was taken by Carolina. Wilf Paymont was taken by he was taken by California, Rick Hampton.
Right.
Paymont was taken by Colorado.
Right.
And then the Islanders took Gillies at 5.
Oh, wow.
You got a great memory.
And then they took Trottier in the second round. He was an underage pick. He was a year older. He was Gresh's age.
Wow.
I
was drafted 96 overall, so I can't remember all the guys who were drafted ahead of me. No, I remember one was Don Maloney, though. We were drafted the same year, Don and I.
Yeah, Don was the Rangers' 1st pick, but that was in the 2nd round.
Yeah, I was their 2nd pick in the 6th round. I was.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'll never forget, I had an English teacher who wouldn't give me the time of day. Like, I would go on the junior road trips. You know, we'd be in Sault Ste. Marie, Sudbury, Ottawa, Kingston. There were trips, not like the West. Never get a break. So he started warming up to me, and then I had something due, a paper due. It was on a rotation basis where my best pal had written a paper on what I needed to do for the 3rd trimester.
Oh.
So I copied his paper verbatim.
Oh.
Handed it to him. He got like a B plus. I got like an A plus.
Oh, that's funny.
So
what's it like in high school and being the 1st overall pick in the draft? That must mean like they're like kids are looking at you like, holy smokes.
Yeah, I suppose so. There's another story. There was a gal who I really kind of had my eye on when I was like 15.
Oh yeah.
And she wouldn't give me the time of day. And then I got drafted. And their prom, she went to the Catholic girls' school, St. Mary's.
Right.
She asked me to her prom.
Oh, is that right? Oh. You said no? Oh, good job. Good job. Was that a little bit of payback? Is that what that was?
Yeah, that was a payback.
Oh, nice.
So there were some quirks along the way that, or perks, I suppose. That's right. Yeah. But I never really thought I was going to make it until I made it. You know, I remember playing in the exhibition. I got to play in an exhibition game in the fall of 1974. Played against Detroit. That's when Gresh and I were both called up. and flew up from Providence. Gresh had been in New York the previous summer for a bit, so he knew the city a little bit. But they dropped us off in front of Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
And we were there with our equipment and sticks, and neither one of us knew where to go.
Yeah.
Then we finally found a guard. Said, "Yeah, well, you go around to the employees' entrance on 33rd. I don't even know what the street was then, but take the elevator to the 5th floor."
Right.
No,
I know, right?
The hockey rink.
Yeah, that's true.
Were you blown away when you first came to New York? Was that your first visit?
That was the first visit. Yeah, I was, because it flew into Kennedy, and my first memory was right before the Midtown Tunnel. There's that huge cemetery.
Oh yeah.
That cemetery goes forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, holy smokes!
A lot of dead people in there.
Yeah, that's like a lot of dead people. Yeah, they're all dead in there.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, I do remember. And I was only there, played the game, and then it was back to Providence. I got called up. My first year of pro, I was called up around Christmas time. I got called up for 3 or 4 games.
Right. So the year after you were drafted, you turned pro. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, I had 2 years left at junior, and but I turned pro. And I remember at that time they had a team in the International League in Port Huron.
Right.
And I thought, gosh, if I could play there, even for starters, I'd be happy. But it was turned out, got 4 games in, and then had a hell of a summer after my first summer pro.
Right.
I'm probably 30 pounds lighter now than I was when I turned up for that.
Oh, is that right? Oh, okay. I did the same thing after my first year pro.
Yeah.
Herbie Brooks is coach. Wrong guy to do it to. Remember we went over to Finland for training camp?
Yeah.
So I had the first year that went pretty well for me, and then Herb comes in the next year, and I'm thinking I'm a veteran now. I'm all arrogant and cocky and everything. Veterans back then, they'd show up out of shape, and, get themselves in shape. So we went over to Finland. We did our testing over here in New York, flew over to Finland, went on the ice right away as soon as we got there, and then he kept me out there by myself for another half hour and skated my rear end off. Yeah. And I'm crying like, why is Herbie picking on me? I'm a veteran kind of thing. And he ripped me. He brought me into his cabin and just ripped me a new one. I
knew because Herbie had called Don and I into his office, and I knew what was coming. So I was in a little better shape. Actually, I learned after that second year of pro. There's a guy by the name of Mike Smith.
Sure.
Who impressed upon me. Listen, and another guy that was a pretty important guy that I actually listened to that made a lot of sense. So that year, that 18 to 19-year-old summer was the worst condition I was ever in my whole life. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. So.
That's interesting.
Good summer, though.
When did you get picked as captain of the team?
Was that? 79.
Wow.
That was Fred Shiro. I was 22. 78.
So you're 22?
Yeah.
So what were you thinking, Dave, when they came to you and said, listen, you're going to be captain? Did they ask you or just said, listen, you're going to be captain?
No, this is, we came out of camp and we had a sponsors luncheon at, in Rye. It was Rye Town Hilton we were at. And Freddie called me aside and said, listen, we're going to make you the next captain. And I remember saying, okay, but if I would find out after Phil would, tell me because he had been the captain.
Oh,
and he met with Freddie and Mickey Keating was the general manager, and we had a fair amount of young guys then. There were a number of guys who were under 23, 24. Pat Hickey was 24, 25. Younger guys, and Phil thought that I would be the right guy for the next.
Really? Captain, I didn't realize that. So Phil gave up the C and said, "Listen, Dave should be the captain."
Yeah, he did, and I think it was a certainly very proud to have been chosen. I was always thought to be somewhat of a leader, younger in different roles, stuff like that. But I was young. I was young. The first year was a fantasy year. We went to the finals that year as captain. And the next camp would have been your second camp. No, your first camp?
So the next camp after the finals, I was
your first training camp?
Yeah, so
that's right. Right. You stayed in college because the next training camp after that was in Richmond, Virginia. And I was wound way tight, way tight. And then Freddie Freddie had his issues, Mickey Keating, so there wasn't a whole lot. I wished I had a little more mentoring and I was young. I was young.
They kind of left us on our own, right? I mean, I remember coming in.
Yeah.
Really wasn't,
again, life is a learning experience, and I would have been a more effective captain, a little bit of mentoring, and just allowed to mature a little bit also, because I was.
But the flip side is obviously they saw something in you, right?
No, I take that with a lot of pride.
Yeah.
But I was young, so.
Right. So were you, obviously I know you well enough, like the Studio 54 days, the Dukes and all that kind of stuff. You kind of, you were part of the team, but that really wasn't your seat.
No, that wasn't my, I was at Studio 54 twice.
Oh, yeah.
And the first time I went in there, I went into the men's room. I'm like, I'm out of here.
Yeah, I know.
And then the second
stuff going on.
Yeah, there was just stuff. That whole lifestyle, I was afraid I'd probably like it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't willing to take a chance of liking that stuff.
Yeah.
And the second time was when we beat the Islanders out of the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And, I was dating my wife to be then. And but we didn't stay very long. So no, and guys were different. They had their deals, and I didn't profess to be any better than anybody else. It just wasn't my deal.
Yeah, that was the thing with that team. Everybody, Dukes was a fantastic teammate, but he had his whole thing. He was paid $6. Yeah. Well, as I said, I've got a ton of respect for you. I know you make a lot of great decisions, but I do need to question one decision you made in the past. You had Chris Katsopoulos and Tom Laidlaw rent your apartment. What were you thinking? Like, what, did you have some kind of a brain cramp, or what's going on?
That would be like the kind of veteran moves to a couple single guys move into my condominium. And I remember going, I don't know why I would have gone over there.
Yeah.
But it certainly wasn't catching up. Maybe my wife, we were married. I think we were married. No, we were getting married.
Yeah.
And she had gone over. Yeah, we were getting married. She had gone over and she said, boy, that condominium. And I went over. I said, I don't want you anywhere near any of those bedrooms.
Oh, God.
Again, I know we've talked, and I know you've got some things in the offing about your life and that people are going to find out about when it gets published. But I remember now and then again the respect how we grow over life.
Yeah.
We first found. Now you're making the marine bed sheet thing, and I don't even have bed sheets in those days.
They didn't get their deposit back on that rental, right?
I probably didn't even charge them deposit. I don't even know what I charged them rent.
Oh, your poor wife came in. I was such a mutthead. Your poor wife came in. I had not cashed any of my paychecks. The paychecks were all on the floor in the bedroom. And she's looking and going, you can cash these things. I'll get to it. I'll get to it some other time. I do remember when she came over and visited, and the look in her eyes were like, oh my God, like what have we done here?
Well, all I will say is one of the two kind of moved on. I'm not sure the second one did.
It is funny. I'd gone back up to Northern Michigan University to put on a presentation for some of the student athletes. And the old coach was there, and I was thinking, oh my God, some of the stuff we did back then. It's the same thing at that point in my life. It was like I just turned pro. I was totally single, making money finally, even though it wasn't that much. Yeah. That's stuff.
Well, no, hey, listen, we all go through it, and we go through it. And,
definitely. So how many years did you have here with the Rangers?
I got traded in December of '84, so it was 9 full seasons.
Right.
Part of one. My second year, I broke my ankle twice, which is no surprise because I was, 25 pounds overweight to start the season. Right. So, but then I got called up in January and was there for 8 more years after that.
Dave, do you remember your first goal? Who was against?
Yeah, Cesar Montiago in Minnesota. It was end to end. I beat 5 guys, went top shelf.
That's a
Laidlaw goal.
Oh, do you remember? You probably don't remember. Do you remember when I scored in our own net in my first NHL game? You probably don't remember that. JD was net. We're up in Boston, and so I'm still with the team. I didn't know if I didn't think I was going to make the team, but I'm still there with the team after training camp. And I shoot the puck. I actually banked it off JD's leg into the net. And he's looking, JD, I mean, who you were, he was one of those guys, like a revered guy, he wanted me.
He was great.
Yeah. So he's looking at me with those eyes through the mask. He's looking at me like, you idiot. Like, what are you thinking about? And that's the next night I had to get a sucker Robert Picard to make the team. Yeah, sucker him at center ice and made the team. So,
no, I do. No, mine was Greg Polis and Phil assisted on it.
Okay.
And I just, they tic-tacked it back, and I was in the slot and just shot it on the ice.
Did they get you the puck then, or is that not a thing they did?
I'm sure they did get the puck, but it wasn't, nobody. And, like that. I just think of the jerseys and different things that, now it's just such a big marketing business. And no, I don't. I'm sure he had the puck somewhere, but don't know. I wouldn't have any idea where it is.
Yeah, different world back then.
Yeah.
Different culture. Like people try to compare the game now to the game back then. It's just, you can't. It's totally different.
You can't. I mean, first of all, it's a much bigger business.
Yeah.
Much bigger business. These guys are entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Making a lot of money and their leverage. I had someone looking for tickets in Toronto.
Right.
And they were willing to pay for them. $220 for the upper bowl, $450 for the lower bowl.
Unbelievable. Wow.
So it's a lot different now, boy.
Right. So you get traded to Buffalo.
Yep. Traded to Buffalo.
Did you? So you still had? I don't want to get too personal with your contract, but when you finally retired from Buffalo, you had a couple of years left in your contract.
I had 2 years left in my contract. I had worked. So what happened, Tom, is I'd gone from a true Herbie Brooks disciple to a guy that he and I didn't quite see eye to eye.
Yeah.
And so I got traded to Buffalo, which was, I don't know how it was for you when you got traded to Los Angeles, but I remember pulling out of the Rye Playland where we were practicing going, and what I do remember, I was in the upstairs in Craig Patrick's office.
Right.
We talked for about 40 minutes.
Right.
And he asked me what I thought of the team, what I thought, this and that. And Herbie was fired 3 months after, which worked. Right. And but I remember coming down and my stall everything was in a box. And you take the box, whatever had knickknacks or something in the stall, and walk out. It was like, gosh, that's 8.5, 9 years of emotion, commitment, your heart. And it was just, okay, move on.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that true? Like other guys get traded away and you think, like you're going to miss it, but you got to move on, right? You got to move on. Yeah, the same thing when you leave, when you get traded, like there's really nobody there. Like those are all your buddies and your teammates, but they've got to get on with their lives too, right?
Yeah, no, I remember too getting traded to Buffalo.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, like, you play against these guys, that guy's an idiot. This guy's an idiot.
Yeah.
This guy's an idiot.
Yeah.
You go there and they are the best guys. They're like the rest, they're hockey guys. Yeah. Like I can't think of, maybe I'm one part of my one hand think guys like I'm not sure about them. Like we're all just trying to do the same thing.
Yep.
And that was, but it was kind of I don't know whether lonely is the right word but moving on was that was tough. But you have to,
Yeah, but like you said, you put your heart and soul into the Rangers. You were the captain of the team, and you wore that too. That's who you were.
I wore my emotions on my sleeve in a lot of ways, and but I do remember moving on. So I got traded on a Thursday, flew to Buffalo Friday morning. So again, if you have your own bag and you go down to the luggage thing, pick your stuff up. Who's there to get me? Scotty Bowman.
Oh yeah.
So Scotty. So I'll never forget. He says, whenever he talks, he never really looks at anybody. He's got the chin out there, right? So he's driving along, I've got to stop at my house. Okay. So he gets in. Listen, I want you to come inside. So I go inside. He goes, listen, go over there. I've got to speak to my wife. Just go in that room over there. So I go into the room, and he's got the replicas of 7 Stanley Cups in his room.
Nice flex.
Yeah.
And, and that was Scotty's way was finding the trigger points for people as they would find out or read. Like he wasn't a great X and O's guy.
Huh.
So he knew I was an emotional, like I walked out of that room like, oh my God, I'm going to win the cup with this guy.
Oh, yeah. So you think he did that on purpose?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Oh. Like I asked other guys, did Scotty ever take you to the house when they picked him up? No. Well, he never even picked me up at the airport.
Wow.
So again, I was coming off, the last half of my tenure at the Rangers. It wasn't like it was when I was a captain and all kinds of stuff. I was a healthy scratch, but I did. I will forever remember that. Man. Then, fast forward 3 months, and I thought he was an idiot too. So.
I was like that at the end of my career too. I was a different person, I think, at the end of my career as it was at the start of my career. I think at the start, maybe you're more willing to accept certain things, or I don't know what it was, but yeah.
Well, I think sometimes too, you get the more knowledge you get, the less innocent you are.
Yeah, totally.
And the less willing you are to kind of take everything and move on. Other times, and it does, it does become personal because you haven't yet learned that it's not personal. They probably like you as a person. Yeah. But when they're scratching you, well, they must not like me. It's not
I
know. And that was the first time I was ever told I couldn't play.
Yeah.
Right? That was Vad. Vad told me that. Carol Vadney in Winnipeg. He was my partner.
Yeah.
Like that down to the end of the Rangers. And I love Vad. I used to commute with him. Sure. And he called me out the room in Winnipeg. You can't play anymore. I said, what?
Oh, he did really? I didn't know that. Yeah. Wow.
What? And then of course, I thought he was an idiot too.
Did you think Tom was an idiot when he was playing?
Who, Tom?
Yes.
No.
Sometimes
I didn't get to know him long enough. No, we played. No, Tom. Your teammates were really.
Yeah.
No, you were all in the same boat. That's what I found about your teammates. You really didn't. You had one or two guys you might talk to on a little more intimate basis.
Sure.
But your teammates, you're all trying to do the same thing. You're all just trying to play.
Well, how great was it playing with your brother? It had to be like
that was awesome. That was awesome because my brother Bob and Don, the three of us played together on a squirt team out of Lindsay. So I would have been 10, turning 11, so 8, 9, and 10. And my dad was the kind of the manager, and my mom, she baked cookies or whatever for the team. We won. We played 50. We played 54 games and won 50 that year.
Is that right?
We played in 7 tournaments and won every one of them.
Wow.
And that was the last time until Don got drafted and ended up playing. And we were roomies, and we sounded an awful lot alike.
Yeah.
So if there was a phone call, you weren't quite sure, didn't want to take it, he'd take it and make up some story or whatever.
Different personalities though, too, right? I mean, like.
Oh yeah. Don's the senator.
That's right. That's you go. Yeah.
Yeah, Don's a senator. He worked so hard. He took power skating lessons, right? Junior into pro. Took power skating lessons.
Wow.
As he was a little, so I could get around, but I always being first in order. I got the new skates.
Right.
So he got the third rotation through. Whether they ever fit his feet or not.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Funny. Yeah.
But I do think that may have had something to do with his development of skating.
Sure. Yeah.
And so no, he's a good man. He's still a good man, and it was great to play with him.
Yeah, I was his roommate for a while too, and he was he's a good guy. A lot of fun. A lot of fun guy. So you go to Buffalo during this whole time. Now you're taking courses during the summer, right, to prepare yourself for a career?
Yeah, I went to Manhattan when I got married. I went to Manhattanville College. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer.
Oh.
But I quickly realized that might be a long time. So I went back I hadn't been back to school in however long, 12 years, 10, 11 years. So I went back to Manhattanville College. I took 3 courses I took a political science course, a history course, and I forget what the third one was. Might have been just 2. But anyway, just for an interest's sake.
Sure.
But in the meantime, I had befriended a partner at Bear Stearns, which was a brokerage firm in New York. And after 6 weeks, Alan Greenberg, Ace Greenberg would be another institution on the street. He called me into his office the night before my last day. And we were talking, and he said, did you like what you were doing here? And I said, yeah, I did like it. And he said, well, you're going to have a job here when you're done.
Oh, wow.
I said, okay. And I said, but I would rather be in a position to know the business rather be taking people out to lunch and taking them to golf, because my golf game is not that good. And I'd rather, if there's an opportunity to learn. So next summer they put me in a rotation program, different parts of the firm. And I've ended up in the equity sales side on the institutional level. Wow. So my our clients would have been banks and pension funds and stuff like that. And there was a great social aspect to it, relationships. You still had to know what you were doing when it came to the markets and stuff like that. But it was a people business, and I rode that for 20 years. It was great.
Wow.
And that afforded me the opportunity to retire on my own time.
Yeah.
I didn't want to hang around. First of all, my ego probably couldn't have stood hanging around and not being the player that I was younger.
Yeah.
And secondly, it afforded me the opportunity then to retire on my own time, where I was not really, and I jokingly say that Herbie was an idiot and Scotty was an idiot. Then when I thought about it a little later on in life, the one guy won the greatest game in the history of American hockey. Mm-hmm. Herbie at Lake Placid, he drove that group. And Scotty had 12 cups or something in his life. I say, well, maybe I'm the idiot. Those guys obviously knew what they were doing. So, but it did. Retiring the way I retired allowed me, I do believe, to retire with just really good memories about the game.
Yeah. I've told you before, and sometimes we joke around, but I've always admired you for that. You still had time left in your contract, both the preparation to get to that point by doing the other stuff. And then like a lot of people just want to milk it as long as possible. I certainly did. I want to play as long as I could,
Yeah. And listen, I did. It's funny because all of us end up in a beer league.
Yeah.
But some of us end up a little sooner than later. Those kids that were great as peewees end up, and really, I know it's cliched, but it was always fun. Hockey was always fun for me.
Yeah.
And it got to be, and then I did have a choice. I had an opportunity.
Sure.
I do remember the first paycheck. Oh my God, because they, again, it was a salary and then bonus, and they made it up to me when bonus time came around. But I remember going, oh my God. I remember calling the accountant. I said, we're going to have to do something here just to get through this. But
change lifestyle,
yeah. And from that standpoint, too, you really respect, even in those days, on a relative basis, what I was making in the NHL was a lot more money than most people were going to make in their life.
Yeah.
And so then I was able to kind of keep involved in hockey from a broadcasting standpoint. Whenever somebody needed somebody on the radio or someone in television, I usually got a call, which was great stuff. I was able to do stuff, all over.
So it first started, you were doing the NBC games. Is that what it was?
Yeah, they started actually. Actually, I was with CTV in Canada. It was 1988. They had 6 Soviet teams come over. It was before the collapse of the Soviet Union. And they played 6 NHL teams. And they did that for CTV, Canadian television. So I did that with the great Dan Kelly, and Long Rouge. Then actually, while I was playing, I got hurt. Remember that playoff series we had in LA? We had the big brawl.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You got hurt in that brawl. That's right. Yeah.
Because I had to wrestle at JP Kelly.
That's right. Yeah.
Because this guy from the coal mines in northern India.
Yeah.
And I threw up in the locker room between periods, and then I hurt my knee. I blew up my knee. I was done for the playoffs. So I got into the radio booth with Marv Albert and Sal Messina.
Okay.
And I found that I really liked that. So then fast forward the end of my career, when I was going to start on the street, I was going to do the Ranger home games. Because they were going to move Sal Messina into the television side, and I was going to fill in for Sal. They brought JD back for the television, so Sal stayed where he was.
Right.
And then I did a nightly report for WNBC. Was their first year of sports radio, which is now the Fan in New York, 660. I did a nightly hockey report, which I would just call in and read off a bunch of stuff.
Right.
But I stayed involved, so I was really lucky. And then what happened, the Rangers win the Cup in 94. Fox needed somebody, local Fox needed somebody, asked the Rangers if they knew of somebody that would do the parade.
Oh.
And outside the day of the parade was the day that OJ went on the lam.
Oh.
So they broke into the parade to broadcast with the white Bronco.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. And so what happened then is actually the local Fox wanted to know if I'd be interested in becoming their sports announcer on the news.
Wow.
So I went through that, and I couldn't afford then to leave the street and take the money that they were paying. I just at that time I had 3 children,
right?
All under the age of Brookie was just Brookie would have been 8 or 9. So anyway, I couldn't afford to do that. But in the meantime, National Fox was getting the contract for, and Ed Gorn called out of the blue and said, "Listen, we got your name from the local Fox.
Oh.
Would you be interested in coming out for an audition for the national studio show?"
Right.
And I said, "Sure. When?" He said, "Well, this weekend." "Well, I can't come out this weekend." I was coaching a squirt or peewee team. It was a state championships, state tournament.
Right.
I said, "Listen, we're going to play on Friday and Saturday. If if we lose, there's a chance I could get out there on Sunday." He said, "You know what? Did you know this is a national network?"
I've got to coach that team.
He said, "And I've got to root for a squirt or peewee hockey team to lose to get you to come here for an audition."
That's funny.
I said, "Yeah, that sounds about right."
That's good. I like that.
And so I went out the next weekend, and that was quite an experience because, and by all, there's Dennis Potvin was up also. Right. He was one of the guys that they were looking at, and really by all, Potvin was a 5-time Stanley Cup winner, Hall of Fame player.
Yeah.
But the story went, I had done an audition for ESPN one time, and they asked me to do the highlights between periods without seeing the game.
Oh.
And I couldn't. So when I went to Fox, they asked me the same thing. I said, "Could I see the highlights first? Because if I was watching the games, I would have some context to the play."
Sure. Yeah.
I said, "Boy, nobody ever asked to do that." I said, "Okay, well, whatever. Can I do it?"
Yeah.
And then I remember I had to get hustled out of there because Dennis was coming in.
Sure.
And sure enough, I ended up getting the job. Dennis, and there were a couple of things that apparently when Dennis was asked to do he said, "Well, I really don't do highlights."
Oh. He's got that little bit of arrogance going there.
Yeah, well, what do you do? Right. And then they said, when you asked to see if you could see the highlights, the replays first, they said, "Well, here's a guy that maybe thinks a little bit ahead or something or whatever." So so that lasted for 4 years, and that was great, and it helped my business too.
Oh, is that right? Oh, yeah, sure,
Totally. There are people. Back to my high school days when that young gal wouldn't pay any attention.
Oh, that's right.
I was 15. There were accounts there that they knew I had a bit of notoriety, but they didn't really care. But then when I was on television every Sunday on National Network,
yeah, that's true.
"Hey Dave, why don't you take this order?"
That's true. I never thought of that too. That's funny. Yeah. It's kind of odd that they have you try out like that. Like they had tapes of you doing other stuff before, right? But
I was the only guy. I was never asked. I don't even know if they asked me for a video. Oh. I was the only guy that didn't have a compilation of his work.
Oh, wow.
I got it all on the one
wow.
shot, I guess. And I found that out after.
Wow, that's interesting.
I wouldn't have had, because I was working.
Right.
I was doing, and the stuff I was doing was just when it came up.
Right.
I couldn't afford to do anything else at the time, and I really liked what I was doing.
Right.
So, yeah. So.
And then, so now you've been with the Rangers on the radio for how many years?
I came in when Hank came in, so I'd like to think it had a lot to do with Hank's career here.
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
But I rode his tails till he retired. So the year after the lockout,
right?
And I was probably the only guy hoping they didn't come back. because I ended up in a partnership that I was a shareholder in the group, had partner units that became vested after 10 years. So if I had to leave, that would have been my 9th year. So by staying and having the league locked out for that 04-05 season, made a world of difference as far as when I got my. So that was just, so I really was, on one hand, I was looking forward to moving on. And that was, and again, I was in a position, because I was in a position to be able to make that decision also. You know, because as my career went along, as the Wall Street was a people business, relationship business, and then technology started in pound. And then a lot of what we were asked to do, clients could do on their own. They didn't need us. So the last year and a half was a grind. And in the meantime, you know, I'll never forget too. So I came in as a principal, you know, and I was right in the middle of things. You know, and then time moves on, it changes. You move away from the center of things. Then you move a little way further. It's like that prime spot in the locker room, right?
So
when you get the locker right next to the door, you go, uh-oh. So I got the seat right by the door. And, okay, it's time for me to move on. So it did.
But you were looking forward to moving on from Wall Street.
It's the same thing. And my memories, it was the same thing. If I had to hang on there, I would have. I would have left. I would have found something. But it kept my foot in the door long enough. Then you know, this is my 18th season. So
that's right. Wow.
So it's Kenny Albert. I've had a relationship almost as long as my first wife.
my 2 wives put together. That's funny.
Well, it's been a great run. It's really been a great run, and looking forward to, you know, living this thing out as best it can. You know, we get to that point now where, you know, you're a little more aware of some of our teammates and different things that are happening to them. And
you and I had a great conversation at breakfast there at the golf tournament there. Like we really evolved, right? We're talking about feelings and
I know.
It is.
I know I was looking around a little bit to make sure nobody was really listening to those two little hockey players actually talking about things.
Speaking intelligently, that was something. Oh, I was laughing because I went up to Northern Michigan and made an hour-long presentation up there to the student athletes, and I got done. It's like, wow. First of all, I had to go to a library, and I thought, well, I didn't know what a library was when I went to school there. So all of a sudden, there. Well, David, I really mean this very seriously. First of all, thank you for for coming on the show, and I mean it entirely. I have a ton of respect for you as a person. You know, the hockey, obviously, I have respect for you for that. But what you've done with your life, both while you were retiring, preparing yourself, the way you treat yourself now and your family. So you're a good man, Mr. Maloney.
Well, Tom, I would honestly, you know, I would echo the same sentiments to you. I've used your story also as someone who, and again, just life is there to learn and to grow, and however one comes to the conclusion how they live the rest of their lives is everyone's right. But you know, when you can kind of learn and live and keep curious, pretty good stuff.
Isn't that true? Yeah, that's how you stay healthy too, right? Don't ever stop. Keep moving. All right, brother. Great to have you on.
All right, great. Thanks.
Bye.
So that was cool. That was your first captain, right? Your landlord.
I have a ton of respect for Dave Maloney. You know, I just always looked at him like probably more even after his career, because the way he prepared himself to have another career after hockey. Because I think he was saying he had 2 years left in his contract up in Buffalo, just didn't want to play there anymore, so he went back to work. So a ton of respect for Dave Maloney.
Yeah, and he's great. He's great between the benches. He's awesome. He's got that insight, and you can tell he's a fan. He's very passionate, but he's also really smart. He's great on the air. He gives you that real perspective. You know, I love hearing him on the MSG broadcast.
Yeah, he's good. All right, Grasshoppers, thank you for listening. We had a fantastic show. We'll see you next time.